News of my husband's newborn son arrived while I was in our bridal chamber, about to share the wedding cup with him. A maidservant burst in, flustered, her face alight with unconcealed joy. "Joyous news, my lord. Rose has borne you a son." As her words fell, the room plunged into silence. My hand went slack, and the wine cup fell, splashing its contents on the floor. Arthur Sterling stormed into the birthing room in a fury. He lifted the infant, ready to smash it to the ground. "You wretched girl. A mere concubine, how dare you become pregnant and give birth without the mistress's permission?" My mother-in-law pleaded with me, weeping. "He is your husband's flesh and blood after all. Now that he is born, won't you grant him a place in this family?" In that moment, all eyes turned to me. It seemed they were waiting for me to relent and give the child a name. I smiled faintly. The old madam is right. He was born on his father's wedding day and is the first grandson of the Sterling family. In my opinion, only the status of legitimate firstborn son would be fitting for him. The moon was bright, the stars brilliant. Within the Sterling estate, lanterns and red silk cast a festive glow. This was supposed to be the joyous wedding day of myself and the head of the Sterling family, Arthur Sterling. But it was interrupted by a maidservant who suddenly barged into our bridal chamber. "Joyous news, my lord. Miss Rose has given birth. It's a young master." The maid was overcome with excitement. She seemed not to notice the eerie silence that had fallen over the room. Arthur instinctively glanced at me. The wine cup slipped from my fingers. Tied together by a red cord, the cups overturned. Half a cup of wine spilled, the vessel spinning just inches from the floor. "Insolence! How dare you call the son of a mere servant a young master?" Arthur thundered. The maid dropped to her knees, apologizing profusely. He had more wine poured and offered the cup to me again. I didn't take it, my expression serene. "To be blessed with a son on your wedding night. Aren't you going to see him?" Arthur's face paled, and he stammered a few panicked explanations. When his eyes met my unnervingly calm gaze, he paused. He promised me, "Rest assured, my lady, I will give you a proper explanation." The unfinished wine was placed back on the red tray. Arthur rose hastily and left, taking the room's crisp, pine-like fragrance with him. "Lead the way," I said, my expression cold. I glanced at the still kneeling maid. For her to dare report the good news on a day like this, she must have been acting under someone's orders. I suspected today's drama could not proceed without me. The maid's eyes, wide with surprise, met mine for a second before she quickly looked down. "Yes," she whispered. She turned, bowing, and led the way. After a long winding path, we arrived at a remote small courtyard. Though secluded, the yard was crowded with people. As I entered, I could hear Arthur arguing loudly with someone. As I drew closer, I saw him. He was holding a baby aloft, poised to throw it to the ground. A circle of maids and matrons surrounded him, pleading desperately, terrified he would suddenly let go before they could catch the child. I stood in the outer room, watching without a word. Then someone shouted, "The mistress is here, mistress. Save us." Arthur's hand holding the baby trembled. He closed his eyes and spat out a hateful reprimand. "You wretched girl, a mere concubine. How dare you become pregnant and give birth without the mistress's permission? Today, I will dispose of this abomination to restore the family's honor. Stop. If you dare touch my grandson, I'll dash my head against the wall." The old madam trembled with rage, blocking his path. Now that the mistress is here, this matter should be for her to decide. The woman who had looked ready to faint from anger just moments ago now swept to the doorway like a gust of wind. She pulled me to stand before Arthur. "He is your husband's flesh and blood after all. Now that he is born, won't you grant him a place in this family?" she asked, her words laced with a subtle threat. Arthur hesitated, a look of pity on his face. He was waiting for me to speak. I watched this farce with cold eyes, my voice dripping with irony. The old madam is right. He was born on his father's wedding day and is the first grandson of the Sterling family. In my opinion, only the status of legitimate firstborn son would be fitting for him. At the words, legitimate firstborn son, Arthur's face went white. The old madam breathed a sigh of relief. The maid kneeling at Arthur's feet kowtowed to me desperately. "Thank you, mistress. Rose will spend the rest of her life serving you like an ox and a horse." Summonon, pack my dowry. We are returning to my family's estate. My lady, please, let me explain. As I turned to leave, my arm was grabbed. Explain what? I turned back, letting out a short, mocking laugh. Explain that the child isn't yours, or that you, the master of the house, were deceived by your servants for 10 months along with your mother. Or perhaps that today's entire spectacle wasn't a calculated plot to force me to accept this child. The more I spoke, the colder my expression became. To put it plainly, the Sterling family had tricked me into this marriage. It was a deliberate humiliation of my family, the Vances. Arthur's apparent defense of me was, in reality, weak and ineffectual. It was clear he wanted me to swallow this bitter pill in silence. He knew that I was not favored in my own family. My father and stepmother would certainly not stand up for me. But they all seemed to have forgotten something. I am a merchant. And the one thing a merchant never does is accept a loss. The grip on my arm loosened. I wrenched it free. Arthur could not have been ignorant of such a blatant scheme. Even if he had been deceived by his own mother, what did that have to do with me? In the end, the concubine was his. The child was his. Stop. If you dare to leave, I will have my son divorce you. By tomorrow morning, all of Bexley will know that the Vance daughter was cast out on her wedding night. When that happens, it won't just be you. Your sister's reputations will be ruined as well. I turned to face the old madam's triumphant smirk. Perhaps she thought my hesitation meant she had me in her grasp. Her face hardened, her voice growing sterner. Let me be honest with you. Rose is no mere concubine. She is my niece. We were just waiting for you to marry into the family. Mother, Arthur cut her off sharply, turning to me with an urgent explanation. I will not make her my concubine. If you are unwilling, I can vow to never take another concubine for the rest of my life, to have only you. Things have come to this. I only ask that you give me one more chance. As if fearing I wouldn't believe him, he raised 3 fingers in a solemn oath. I narrowed my eyes, my gaze growing colder. And if I say no, will you do as your mother says? Now, I wanted to test him to see how much sincerity he truly had for me. He hesitated for a moment. I smiled. Arthur Sterling, you still don't know me well enough. Perhaps once, I had felt a fleeting flutter of my heart for this man. But now, I was paying the price for that moment of foolishness. But who am I? The most successful businesswoman in all of Bexley. The last thing I fear is paying a price. When I returned home with my grand procession of dowry carts, the gates of the Vance estate were shut tight. My governess, Martha, knocked for a long time, but no one came. She couldn't help but curse. A useless bunch of ornaments. They think because the young mistress is married, they can slack off and not even guard the gate. After her outburst, her eyes reddened. I knew exactly what was happening. For years, I had followed my uncle, spreading my business across Bexley. My stepmother had always been displeased. She resented me for shaming the family by showing my face in public. And she resented me for not bringing home the money I earned for her to use. This time, she had used my grandmother's illness to seize control of my marriage prospects, wanting to marry me off as a second wife to her own nephew. By a twist of fate, I ended up marrying the fine husband she had chosen for her own daughter. Naturally, she could not tolerate my presence now. I immediately ordered the procession to turn around, to West Street. I had long known I had no place in that house, so I had already purchased several properties for myself on West Street. A house is a home, a place of my own, where I could feel safe. Just as the old madam had predicted, by the next morning, the city of Bexley was buzzing with rumors. They said the Vance daughter had infuriated her mother-in-law on her wedding night, causing the old woman to faint, and had been thrown out of the Sterling house on the spot. There was no mention of the child. The Vance family also made a public announcement. The unfilial daughter, Eleanor Vance, was no longer associated with the Vance family. The ladies and noblewomen of the city all regarded me with shame. My dozen or so shops were all affected. Early in the morning, reports started flooding in. There was a riot at the pastry shop. They looted the place. We lost over 100 silver pieces. Several groups of ladies came to the jewelry store today, claiming our gold pins and jade ornaments were faulty and demanding refunds. The amount is substantial. The cosmetics shop, too. Some women I've never seen before came in, shouting that our products were defective and demanding compensation. And everyone was in a panic. It wasn't just refunds and troublemaking. Even regular customers, believing the rumors, had taken their business elsewhere. Who would dare buy anything from the shop of an immoral, unfilial, and unjust person? The situation had escalated so quickly, it was obvious someone was orchestrating it. As I was racking my brain for a solution, Arthur Sterling arrived. He didn't mention the child. He didn't mention Rose. His forehead was dotted with a thin layer of sweat, and he spoke, panting. "Do you remember why you married me, please? Just continue to use me." "I am willing." I frowned and looked past him. "Arthur Sterling, are you aware of how much money I have lost today because of your family's affairs?" If Arthur hadn't mentioned it, I would have almost forgotten. Not long ago, my maternal grandmother had fallen gravely ill. The doctor said her time was short. Her only remaining worry was me. My stepmother seized the opportunity, trying to arrange a marriage between me and her widowed nephew. My father, who had long been displeased with me for conducting business in public, actually agreed to her scheme, to avoid their manipulation and protect my ailing grandmother from further distress. I rushed back from my grandmother's home as soon as I heard the news. In my desperation, I went to Arthur. "Arthur Sterling, marry me." Our grandfathers had been friends. After his father passed away, my family had provided them with much assistance. So, we had known each other since childhood. Of the few men I knew, he was the only one I considered a tolerable candidate for marriage. At the time, he had blushed and stammered, finally managing a single word. "Yes." The weight on my shoulders lifted, and I explained the reason for my proposal. "Business is business. Since this is a transaction, you may name your price. Anything within my means I will provide. Since it was to be a marriage in name only, it was best to keep it about money. It was cleaner that way." The moment I finished speaking, the blush faded from his cheeks. The joy in his eyes turned to shock. Then, he took a few steps forward, a complex emotion I couldn't decipher swirling in his eyes. He took my hands in his. "If this is a transaction, it should be an equal exchange. If I offer my true heart in marriage, Miss Vance, would you be willing to offer yours in return?" If it had been anyone else, I would have scoffed. But facing Arthur, I couldn't laugh. His feigned composure, the serious look on his face, and the way his hands tightened unconsciously made my head spin for a moment. For years, I had secretly funded his studies. Aside from the friendship between our families, I also thought he was a decent person. A decent scholar, a decent character, decent looking. As a husband, he would probably be decent, right? Perhaps I was out of breath from rushing over. I could hear my own heart pounding like a drum. For the first time in 20 years, my heart was moved. And like a fool, I fell into the sincerity of his gaze. I am willing to try. Not for my grandmother. Not to counter my stepmother's schemes. In that moment, I truly wanted to try. What did it feel like to choose one person to rely on? A pity that fleeting moment of emotion came so quickly and went just as fast. "I have a plan. I can help you," Arthur shouted hastily as I, growing impatient, waved for the guards to remove him. The guards paused, looking to me for confirmation. Arthur seized the opportunity to break free and rush before me. "The damage to Vance and Company's reputation, and your family's attitude towards you, it all stems from our marriage. If you don't mind, I am willing to do as you first suggested. We can be a couple in name only. Once your business recovers and your grandmother is at peace, if you wish to leave, we can divorce at any time." Seeing my silence, he quickly added, "Or I can write the divorce papers for you now. You can hold on to them and leave whenever you wish. How does that sound?" "Fine." This time, my reply was swift. Arthur hadn't expected me to agree so readily. A look of pleasant surprise crossed his face. He immediately began writing the divorce papers in the courtyard. With a flourish of his brush, a beautifully worded document was complete. I glanced at it. It was filled with tender sentiments, expressing deep reluctance and regret. But once a heart has grown cold, it cannot be warmed again. I impassively handed the papers to Martha, who stood behind me. She hesitated, opening her mouth as if to persuade me. A single look from me silenced her. "I have accepted the divorce papers. Our marital bond is now severed. You may leave." "What?" I ignored his disbelief. and had him escorted out. Then, I gave a series of firm orders to the managers behind me. Anyone causing trouble or looting, send them to the authorities and press charges to the fullest extent. For those wanting to return jewelry, items from within the last 3 days can be returned. For older purchases, if confirmed they were bought from our stores, they can be returned for a partial refund. As for the cosmetics shops, bring in a doctor from the apothecary. If it's a genuine allergic reaction to our products, we will cover all medical expenses. If they are just making trouble, send them to the authorities. We'll claim they're attempting extortion. Unless they can produce evidence, we will sue them. Furthermore, starting today, all shops will offer a 10% discount. The reason? To celebrate the Sterling family being blessed with a legitimate firstborn son, and hire a few storytellers. Have them spread the tale of my dear stepmother's schemes as well. The public didn't know the truth. They loved gossip and enjoyed kicking someone when they were down. Instead of empty denials, I would give them a show they wouldn't forget. And while I was at it, I'd make an example of them. Things had escalated so quickly, there had to be instigators. Fortunately, the money I had spent greasing palms at the magistrate's office over the years would not go to waste. After giving my orders, I was about to write to my uncle when I paused. Something wasn't right. Arthur's mother, though the mother of a scholar, was from a farming family. When she married, the Sterling family was already in decline. Even with her so-called niece, it was unlikely they could stir up so much trouble on their own. And the Vance family's eagerness to kick me while I was down was too swift, too harsh. With this in mind, I doubled the payment for the storytellers. The storytellers, well paid, spun their tales with gusto. One story after another. The listeners were filled with righteous indignation. They cursed my stepmother, Lady Vance. They cursed Arthur's mother. They cursed Rose. They cursed Arthur. And finally, they cursed me too. If you ask me, this storyteller must have been paid. She tried to be clever and failed. She should think about it, a mere merchant's daughter. If it weren't for this scandal, why would the Sterling family ever marry her? She got a good deal and is still complaining. She is probably just making a fuss to control her husband in the future. Businesswomen are full of tricks. If I were the Sterlings, I'd ignore her for a month. Would she really dare to divorce him? Everyone said. I had married Arthur to climb the social ladder. They called me a lowly merchant girl, and him a noble scholar. It seemed no one remembered that I too was once the daughter of an official. After my maternal grandfather passed away, my father failed to secure a position in the government, and the Vance family became commoners. Even so, with my own 2 hands, I had maintained the Vance family's wealth for many years. Our clothes and lifestyle were no less grand than when my grandfather was alive. And Arthur Sterling, all these years, had relied on the Vance family, on my financial support to achieve the success he had today. We each made our own way in the world. I never asked him for anything in return. Nor did I ever use my support to pressure him into marrying me. How could this be my fault? Martha overheard these comments and cried until her eyes were red. When your mother entrusted you to me, it is all my fault for not protecting you, for letting you suffer such injustice. Martha, what are you saying? If you hadn't risked your life to protect me so many times when I was young, I don't know what would have become of me. I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. I was genuinely grateful to her. She was my mother's dowry maid. After my mother passed away, she could have returned to my grandmother's home and married well. But for my sake, she stayed with the Vance family for over a decade, never marrying. But to see you so wronged, my lady, and to be powerless to help. Tears streamed down her face again. I took out a handkerchief and gently wiped her tears away, but she only cried harder. My lady is so capable, so much more capable than that Arthur Sterling. How could they slander and hurt you like this? Dear Martha, I gently hugged her. Let them slander me. As long as you know that I am stronger than them, that is all that matters. I had long known that people only believe what they want to believe. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a reason. So that day, I gave new orders to the managers of Vance & Company. Every shop is to have an on-site accountant. If anyone deliberately causes damage, record it on the spot and demand compensation. We will not be lenient. Internally, Vance & Company will continue to strive for excellence. Our food and goods must be of the highest quality. Externally, all sales are final. Once money is exchanged, no returns. Compared to a temporary bad reputation, I cared more about the business of Vance and Company. With public sentiment inflamed, Vance and Company was like a roast on a spit. I was so busy I barely had time to breathe. After dealing with a group of suppliers who tried to take advantage of the situation by raising their prices, I was rushing out the door. My stepmother and father arrived together, their faces grim. My father let out a cold snort, not even bothering to speak, and sat down in the main seat. He had always considered me a rebel. He couldn't control me, and he looked down on me. My stepmother, clutching a handkerchief, spoke in a syrupy, sarcastic tone. "When you refused to marry my honest nephew, I thought you had your sights set higher, that you had snagged a better prize. But to be rejected by your husband's family on your wedding night, bringing shame upon our family and affecting your sisters. Your father and I have discussed it. From now on, you are to stay out of the affairs of Vance and Company, go and apologize properly to the Sterling family. And from now on, be a good and obedient wife. In time, people will naturally forget all this unpleasantness." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Her scheme was so obvious it was practically hitting me in the face. And absurdly, my father looked as if he thought it was a perfectly reasonable idea. I sat back down, took a sip of tea, and eyed her coolly, my voice like ice. "Vance and Company was built by my own hands. If I am not in charge, are you suggesting I hand it over to you? Are you worthy? Furthermore, it was the Sterling family who was in the wrong first, who humiliated me and the Vance family. If you want to play the part of an elder and preserve your dignity, you should be going to the Sterling estate to demand justice. As for your nephew, if he is so wonderful, why not wait another year? When my sister comes of age, she can marry him. That way, you'll be related by marriage, and everyone will know that. No, your Vance family's stepmother is not some cruel woman who mistreats her stepdaughter and covets others." I had no patience for pleasantries. I refuted every one of her hidden intentions, cutting off any further arguments she might have had. My stepmother's face turned a pale green. She instinctively looked to my father, his expression flickered, but he had no intention of speaking. It was this constant attitude of a detached observer that allowed him to remain blameless time and time again. Even now, no one had a single bad word to say about him. I rose and advanced on her. "When I was away, you tried to manipulate my marriage to benefit your good-for-nothing nephew. If it weren't for my grandmother's poor health, do you think I wouldn't have settled this score with you by now?" The thought of my ailing grandmother brought a lump to my throat. After my mother died, she was both my shield and my weakness. She wanted to see me happy, so I tried my best to be happy, or at least pretend to be. My stepmother's face went white. How dare you? I am your mother." Her finger trembled, almost poking me between the eyes. I swatted her hand away without a second thought. Slowly, heavily, I enunciated each word. "My mother is long dead. When I was a child, right after my mother died, I felt insecure for a long time. I would often wake up crying in the middle of the night, calling for her. My father would tell me just as coldly, 'Your mother is long dead.' My mother was long dead, so I became a motherless child. A motherless child has no right to cry. Martha could only cover my mouth with tears in her eyes and carry me away. Later, my grandmother took me in. Less than a year later, my father remarried and had me brought back. This house now has a mistress. A Vance child does not need to be raised by outsiders. But his so-called raising was nothing more than feeding me. My stepmother coveted my mother's dowry and naturally treated me poorly. Those days of living at the mercy of others, of suffering. The memory is still suffocating. My stepmother was silenced. The atmosphere was tense. My father, who had been sitting impassively, finally looked up and glared at me, his voice full of disgust. "You are sharp-tongued and disrespectful to your elders. No wonder you displeased your mother-in-law the moment you were married. No matter what, that is your husband's child. He calls you mother. How can you not tolerate a single child? He should have said that long ago." I gave my stepmother a sarcastic glance. Seeing the guilt in her eyes, I smirked and said nothing. He continued, "It is my fault. I spoiled you from a young age, letting you become rebellious and lawless. Fortunately, the Sterling family is magnanimous. As long as you are willing to admit your mistake and apologize, and agree to accept that mother and son, they are willing to forgive and forget and allow you to return. I have already agreed on your behalf. Tonight, you will go to the Sterling house and apologize." He ended with a tone that brooked no argument, the very picture of a stern father. Clack! I slammed my teacup down. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I suddenly changed my mind. I spread my hands. An apology requires sincerity. Vance and Company is currently suffering heavy losses. Where am I to find the money to prepare a sincere gift? My stepmother quickly interjected. "How could you have no money? Even if Vance and Company has none, don't think I don't know about your mother's dowry." She was afraid that if she didn't speak up, my father would give me the money. But how could that be possible? I met my father's gaze as he instinctively looked away. My face was cold, a sarcastic smile on my lips. "I will not touch my mother's dowry. Let's wait a few days. After I've sorted out the issues with Vance and Company, I will prepare a lavish gift and go apologize." He finally looked at me again, pondered for a moment, and said coldly, "Be quick about it. The Sterlings intend to hold a 1-month celebration for their grandson. They need the mistress of the house to manage it. A child born to a concubine, and they dared to hold a grand celebration." I raised an eyebrow. I summoned a maid and gave her a few instructions. She replied, "Yes," and hurried off. It was just an excuse to stall my father. But the Sterling family received the message and sent someone over that very night. It was the old madam's personal attendant, Martha's counterpart, a woman she had been close to in her home village. She arrived with several thick lists, her posture haughty. The old madam says that although the mistress is still reflecting on her mistakes, the young master's 1-month celebration cannot be delayed. You are to prepare 20 tables of the highest standard from the Fushu restaurant, a 2-pound solid gold necklace, and a gold and jade necklace, 3 pairs of gold bracelets, and 5 bolts of the finest brocade and silk. You must invite all the esteemed guests on this list. Furthermore, the old madam has specifically instructed that on the day of the celebration, an announcement will be made to elevate concubine Rose to the status of a proper secondary wife. She is a great contributor for having borne a son, so her ceremony must also be of the highest standard. Do you understand? A crone from the mud, thinking she had become a phoenix by marrying into a great house. She was the very picture of a dog borrowing its master's might. All she cared about was bleeding me for money, without even considering if a newborn could bear the weight of a 2-pound gold necklace around its neck every day. I didn't even bother to look at her. "Leave the things and get out." She didn't move. Her greedy eyes were fixed on the jade bracelet on my wrist. "I've made the trip all the way here. Surely the mistress can spare some silver for my troubles." My eyes turned cold. A maid immediately stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face twice. "What kind of filth are you, trying to extort our mistress? Get out!" The woman flinched, turning to flee. At the doorway, she let out a loud cough and spat a thick glob of phlegm onto the priceless carpet. "What is this nonsense? Not even a tip for my trouble. You just wait. When you come back to the Sterling house, see how my old friend deals with you." The next second, she ran into a wall of flesh. Meeting a pair of fierce eyes, her arrogance vanished. "What do you want?" "I am the old Madam Sterling's best friend. If you dare harm me, she won't let you get away with it." She tried to act brave, but her legs were trembling so much she could barely stand. Without a word from me, my servants held her down, awaiting my orders. "Take her to Lord Sterling. Watch her and make her repeat every word she just said. One mistake, one slap." She was just a servant. I didn't want to stoop to her level, but I had more important things to do. Until the issues with Vance and Company were resolved, I couldn't go back to care for my grandmother in peace. I couldn't let the Sterlings ruin my plans. Fortunately, despite all the public criticism, when people saw that Vance and Company was offering a 10% discount, and that the quality of the jewelry was even better than before, and that the pastries seemed a bit larger, they continued to shop there, even as they cursed my name. Didn't they say 10% off? Only a fool wouldn't take a good deal. If we all buy something, she'll earn less. Let's buy as much as we can and bankrupt the wicked merchant. Others, though not quite understanding the logic, felt there was some truth to it. The few who weren't swayed and tried to urge reason were convinced by the others. If we don't buy now, are we going to wait a few days and pay full price? And so the slogans to buy is to earn and buy out Vance and Company. Leave them with no stock to sell spread through the streets. Busyness at Vance and Company boomed again. A single day's revenue was equal to 3 to 5 normal days. Some shops even saw a dozen times their usual daily revenue. When the managers came to see me, they couldn't wipe the smiles off their faces. That was a brilliant move, mistress. I thought we were in for a tough time. It was a tough time. Fortunately, I realized in time that Arthur's uneducated mother wouldn't have the cunning or the means to use me to attack Vance and Company. It was likely someone with ulterior motives was using the opportunity to cause trouble, so I decided to play along. Of course, my managers only dared to be happy in my presence. Once they returned to their shops, they wore expressions of deep sorrow. The more customers they had, the more their brows furrowed in mock despair, as if Vance and Company were on the verge of bankruptcy. In reality, every shop was swarmed with customers from the moment they opened. They had to close 1 or 2 hours earlier than usual. Some were only open for 2 or 3 hours a day. Every day, I looked at the account books, my mood growing heavier and heavier. Finally, I was forced to take my people back to the Vance estate, not to ask for help, but to take things. The Vance family has lived off of me and Vance and Company for years. The company's accounts have never been part of the household books, but many of the things in this house were bought with my money. Now that Vance and Company is in trouble, what is wrong with me selling these things to tide us over? My stepmother tried to stop us, but her pampered servants were no match for the strong, burly women I had brought with me. While my father was out, I pointed out the most valuable items, one by one. I pointed. They carried. By the end, we had filled 2 large carts. The once magnificent estate now looked much dimmer. As I was leaving, I turned my back to my wailing stepmother. "What are you crying about? There are still plenty of treasures left in the house. Tell my father that when Vance and Company recovers, I will return these things twofold. By then, the Sterling family will surely look upon our Vance family with higher regard." At my words, my stepmother's eyes rolled back, and she fainted amidst the cries of her maids. Besides the Vance family, I also paid a visit to all the clan elders who had benefited from my generosity over the years. I didn't even look at them. Vance and Company is just facing a small setback. I've been in business for many years and have earned a lot of money. A small loss is nothing. With a little help from my elders, we will get through this quickly. These people were used to taking, never giving. I was done indulging them. If a loan is out of the question, then please return all the money and treasures you have taken from me over the years. In addition to the strong women and guards, I had brought a troop of drummers and gong beaters. I was determined to burn my bridges. For years, I had provided them with fine food, wine, and treasures, all in the hopes of having more say in my own marriage. Though it was up to one's parents and a matchmaker. The words of the clan elders carried weight that even my father had to heed. And what was the result? My stepmother had malicious intentions, and these people did nothing. They assumed that as long as Vance and Company bore the Vance name, they could take whatever they wanted. I had been too busy before. Today, I would tear away their last shred of dignity. The owner of Vance and Company has gone mad. The company is going bankrupt. More than bankrupt, I hear she is in massive debt. Even with the entire Vance and Sterling fortunes, she can't fill that hole. The common folk always believed whatever they heard. After my series of actions, they were convinced that Vance and Company was finished. Some even began to pity me. For a woman to build such a business, she must be quite something. Indeed, a single woman supporting an entire great family. I've never heard of such a thing. A pity she is just a woman. Ice cask a woman causing such a disaster. She'll probably be abandoned by her family. No wonder the Sterlings were so clever to get rid of such a bride so quickly. The rumors grew wilder. Although the Vance family had said they were severing ties with me, they had neither removed me from the family registry, nor written a formal letter of disownment. So it wasn't official. I had to give them a push. The clan elders, having lost both face and money, were probably itching to tear out the page with my name on it from the registry. Now, everything was in place. I waited patiently. But instead of my family, Arthur came. It was late when I returned home after finishing my business. Bathed in moonlight, I found him pacing anxiously outside my gate. He must have been there for a while. He was covered in a layer of frost. Seeing me alight from my carriage, he strode forward to block my path. Is Vance and Company in trouble? Do you need my help? He then corrected himself. No, not help. We are husband and wife. Your business is my business. Pack your things today and come back with me. I will speak to my mother personally. As for the aftermath with Vance and Company, leave it to me. He finished, waiting cautiously for my answer. Though I was exhausted, I couldn't help but study him for a long moment. We hadn't seen each other in days, but the worry in his eyes seemed genuine. Perhaps it was sincere, but that sincerity would be halved when faced with his mother. And halved again when it came to his newborn son. Half of a half was not enough. I feigned a look of confusion, then explained as if in sudden realization. I was too busy these past few days. This afternoon, I had someone deliver the divorce papers to the magistrate's office. As of now, we are in fact no longer husband and wife. Once the papers were filed, there was no turning back. But I had lied to him. I had held on to the papers to keep the Vances in check. I hadn't had time to deal with them before. Though they had publicly disowned me, they still wanted to bleed me and my company dry. Not only did my stepmother covet my business, but even my usually sanctimonious father had tried to make a move on Vance and Company when I left the Sterling estate. But he was too greedy. He wanted both my company and, through me, a connection to the Sterling family. Arthur had a bright future ahead of him, something the Vance family desperately needed. He thought that as long as my name was in the family registry, I could never escape them. A pity that his hesitation cost him his chance. Even if we are not husband and wife, I can still help. No, just think of it as me repaying a debt. Don't you remember, you helped me without asking for anything in return? Arthur forced a smile and held out a small wooden box. I know you never liked me. You married me out of necessity. But I truly love you. Inside this box are all the deeds to the Sterling family's lands and shops. Take them for now. If it is not enough, I will find another way. The autumn night was cold. I saw a thin layer of frost on his eyebrows. Suddenly, my heart felt light. I refused his offer, reminding him gently, I hear your family is planning a 1-month celebration for your eldest son. Such a feast will not be cheap. You should take this back. My mother doesn't understand these things. This money you should. I don't need money, really. I pushed the box back into his arms and gave a slight curtsy. Whatever had happened before, at a time when even my closest relatives were unwilling to help, he had offered a lifeline. I would accept his kindness, and it was only right to thank him. From now on, we owed each other nothing. When my father learned of my divorce from Arthur, he could no longer sit still. You worthless thing. I knew from the day you were born that you were a curse on this family. This was the first time since I had founded Vance and Company that he had shown his malice towards me so openly. His twisted face merged with the one from my childhood that would so often beat and scold me. But this time, I was no longer afraid. I met his pressure with a sharp retort. You reap what you sow. If I am a curse, what does that make you? He had previously resisted the pressure from the clan elders to deal with me because he was waiting to see Arthur's attitude. Once the news of our divorce was out, he immediately summoned the elders. The entire hall of elders who had fed off my wealth for years now glared at me with fury. They clamored to open the ancestral hall and strike my name from the family registry. My father wrote the letter of disownment on the spot. He had a copy made and posted it in the busiest part of the market square. The unfilial daughter Eleanor Vance, disrespectful to her elders, without virtue, arrogant, and rebellious. From this day forward, she is expelled from the Vance family, stripped of her surname. Henceforth, in life and in death, she has no connection to the Vance family. It was a thick document, said to be 3 full pages of curses against me. It was as if a decade of pent-up rage had been unleashed onto those 3 sheets of paper. I only glanced at it to confirm it was the disownment letter before having Martha put it away. Martha looked as if she wanted to tear the papers to shreds, but I stopped her. We can't tear this. If someone tries to go back on their word one day, we will have proof. Her expression changed from anger to joy. You are right, my lady. I will keep it safe. I will keep it very safe. Now everyone thought I was finished, waiting to see me become a laughingstock. To see how a woman abandoned by both her husband's and her own family would fall from grace. To see how the Wonder Woman of Bexley would come crashing down. But the next day, Vance and Company opened for business as usual. Not only that, 20 new Vance and Company shops opened overnight in the neighboring city of Essex. I had stalled my father precisely so I could make these preparations. After the storm, a new dawn. Now, completely free from the Vance family, I could finally expand Vance and Company as I had always wanted. Our mistress says that to celebrate the opening of our new stores, all Vance and Company locations will offer a 15% discount for 5 days only. After 5 days, all prices will return to normal. The shopkeepers' calls drew in crowds of eager shoppers. No one had time for idle gossip, to debate whether the Vance family had disowned me too hastily, or if the Sterling family had made a grave mistake. Fortunately, Vance and Company was well prepared this time. Every shop was well stocked, and we made a fortune. After 5 days, everything returned to normal. Though the prices went back up due to the quality and popularity of our products, business remained brisk. After everything was settled, I rushed to my uncle's house. I was eager to know how my grandmother was doing. The moment I saw him, I received a stern lecture. "You child, how could you handle such a big matter without discussing it with your family?" I felt a little guilty. "Didn't I write to you? You think that gives you the right?" My uncle glared at me, his scolding raining down. "That wasn't a discussion, that was a notification. And you told me not to let your grandmother know. Your grandmother may have been spared the worry, but do you know how anxious I've been? If something had happened to you, how would I have answered to your grandmother and your mother?" As he spoke, his eyes reddened. He had been caring for his ailing mother while worrying about me. No wonder he looked so much thinner. But this was something we had discussed long ago. Though my uncle had taught me business, I was still a Vance daughter. From the first time my stepmother tried to take Vance and Company from me, and my father tacitly allowed it, I had prepared for this day. I just never imagined that my stepmother would dare to meddle with my marriage, and that my father wouldn't object to such a vile person. I had to act decisively. Who knew that marrying Arthur would also be a mistake? A well-read scholar manipulated by 2 illiterate peasant women, and I was dragged through the mud with him. But despite my anger, I decided to turn their plot to my advantage. The situation was urgent. "I had no choice," I said, lowering my eyes. No matter how justified my explanation, it lost its force in the face of a loved one's tears. So I accepted my punishment. 10 days later, an invitation arrived from the Sterling family. It was for their eldest son's 1-month celebration. The handwriting was not Arthur's. He had previously explained to me helplessly, "My mother is from a farming family. She doesn't understand the rules and etiquette of high society." I was also kept in the dark about the child. As for a 1-month celebration, that is, of course, out of the question. High society was not just about matching status. Though a master could have a concubine before marrying his main wife, a concubine was different from a secondary wife. And for a family like the Sterlings, to have a concubine give birth on the very day of the master's wedding was not just an insult to the new bride, but to her entire family, let alone holding a 1-month celebration for the child. But my father and stepmother had been eager to kick me while I was down and seize my company, which had made the old madam misjudge the situation. Not only did she want to hold a celebration, but I heard she also planned to find a new match for Arthur at the event. And Arthur's acquiescence was, it seemed, to be expected. Any other family would be trying to hush up such a scandal, but the Sterlings are practically beating drums and gongs to announce it to the world. How amusing! My uncle sneered as he saw me staring at the invitation. I agreed earnestly. Yes, it is a good thing I cut my losses and divorced him early. I was relieved, yet a little regretful. My uncle flicked my forehead. "You have the nerve to say that. You are not to go to that celebration. From now on, you are to stay far away from the Sterling family, and from Arthur Sterling. Do you understand?" My uncle, still worried, emphasized his point. "Of course. I had no intention of going. All I want now is to spend more time with my grandmother." I casually tossed the invitation into the fire. I grabbed my cloak and walked out of the warm study. Braving the cold wind, I hurried to my grandmother's courtyard. She was awake for only a few hours each day now, but I had endless things to tell her. Fortunately, now that Vance and Company was free from those parasites, I could devote my time to caring for her. Sometime later, news came from Bexley. The Vance family had fallen into ruin. My father had gathered a crowd and was blocking the entrance of our largest jewelry store, demanding money. I am your owner's father. I gave her life. I raised her. She ought to support me with her money. When no one paid him any mind, he tried to storm the shop and grab things. The shop assistant stopped him, so he threw himself on the ground and feigned injury, shouting for help. Finally, the manager had the authorities summoned. He is, after all, your biological father. How should we proceed? Please advise, mistress. Reading the manager's letter, I wanted to laugh. He had been so eager to disown me, and now he was my biological father again. With a stroke of my pen, I told the manager to handle it as he saw fit. The disownment letter had been circulated throughout Bexley. Even if it went to court, I was not afraid. Later, the manager sued him for damaging merchandise, demanding a high price in compensation. The Vance family had no money to pay, so he was sent to debtor's prison. The manager made sure to shout it all the way there. When the Vance family saw Vance and Company in trouble, they were so afraid of being implicated that they threw their own daughter out of the family. Now he claims to be her father. With a hide that thick, why don't you go and build the Great Wall? A crowd of onlookers gathered. The rest of the Vance family slunk away in shame. Later, I heard that my stepmother had sold off their remaining possessions and tried to flee, but was caught by my father, who had just been released. In the ensuing scuffle, my father fell into the river. By the time he was pulled out, he was bloated and dead. My stepmother was convicted of murdering her husband and sentenced to be hanged. The great Vance family had fallen into ruin overnight. It was a sad tale. 3 years later, Vance and Company had grown larger and larger. After my grandmother passed away, I moved from my uncle's house to the one next door. Later, I moved to the capital. My uncle said I was a natural-born merchant. The capital, at the foot of the emperor, was a place of immense wealth and intoxicating luxury. But it only made me long for the beauty of the South. And so, the shops of Vance and Company spread further and further south. 5 years later, a female tycoon emerged in the South. Overnight, the women of Bexley began to learn business. Women who had once been confined to their homes bravely stepped out. Some women, when their businesses failed, even blamed their husbands for holding them back and divorced them without a second thought. They all claimed the owner of Vance and Company was once on the verge of losing everything. It was only after her divorce that she rose from the ashes and made her business a great success. They tried to imitate me, but they didn't understand the true meaning of business. In the end, they lost everything and tried to return to their domestic lives, only to find their husbands no longer wanted them. And so, a group of destitute women spent their days cursing me for destroying their families and ruining their happiness. Others looked on with envy but dared not take the first step. They could only sigh in their boudoirs. Not everyone can be like Vance and Company and catch a lucky break. The owner was just purely lucky. When Martha heard this, she would fume. A bunch of ignorant fools. If our mistress were truly lucky, how could she have met such a terrible group of people? I nodded seriously, in complete agreement. Eleanor Vance had come this far. It wasn't luck, it was work.